As always, we're going to share our school nutrition mission and vision with you. School nutrition is a valuable partner in education, pledging to provide coordinated support for outstanding student achievement through our commitment to excellent service in each of these core areas. They are quality meals, student and community engagement, and professional development. Our presenters for today are our compliance specialist, Stephanie Taylor, Sarah Combs, and Lydia Martin. They are on to give you a wave. And I do see the comment, there is a link to the presentation handout located right under the welcome message. So you'll see it right at the bottom of that message. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sarah.
All right, so during today's training, we will discuss the requirements to operate the Seamless Summer option this school year. At the conclusion of today's training, you will be able to successfully identify the requirements to operate the Seamless Summer option, successfully input the required information into SNOW, submit claims with correct information, and operate a Seamless Summer program. Please note that there are no waivers available for this coming year, and so the allowances that were in place last year are not available. So pay close attention to what is allowable moving forward this year. So the first topic we are going to discuss is the requirements to operate the Seamless Summer option, or SSO. The purpose of the Seamless Summer option is to ensure that students in low-income areas continue to receive meals during the traditional summer vacation periods and for year-round schools during school vacation periods that are longer than 10 operating days or school days. The Seamless Summer option is available for districts that participate in the National School Lunch and/or School Breakfast Program. An SSO combines features of the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program, and the Summer Food Service Program regulations. So choosing to operate SSO is a great choice. This program reduces the paperwork and the administrative burden that is normally associated with operating multiple programs, and it operates under many of the same regulations, procedures, and policies that it currently operates under during the regular fiscal year. So since the purpose of the program is to ensure students have access to meals during the summer, a site must operate at least 4 days during the summer to be approved. Under SSO, meals are available to all children or students 18 or under. Students under 21 with a mental or physical disability may also receive free meals. And also, if the site is an open or restricted open site that employs staff younger than 18, then those staff may receive a free meal. However, if the site is closed enrolled, staff under 18 would not be able to receive a free meal because participation is only for the enrolled students. So let's discuss what qualifies as a site. Only SFAs administering the National School Lunch Program or School Breakfast Program may participate in the Seamless Summer option. However, with state agency approval, SFAs may sponsor non-school feeding sites under SSO. Sites may be located in schools or at non-school facilities such as community buildings, parks, or other outdoor locations, as well as mobile feeding sites. These sites must be area eligible, operate at least 4 days in length, and in most cases, operate as an open advertised site providing meals on a first-come, first-served basis to all children under the age of 18. The method that SFAs use to establish the site's eligibility is referred to as area eligibility. Sites are considered area eligible when they are located within the geographical boundaries of a school attendance area with at least 50% of its children approved for free or reduced price meal benefits. Site eligibility is based on the location of each site. Sites may include schools or non-school facilities such as community buildings, parks, or other outdoor locations, and as well as mobile feeding sites that are also area eligible. Site eligibility can be based on another school in the same attendance area. Schools that participate in CEP or Provision 2 are not automatically considered area eligible. Eligibility is based on individual school information. So the school must utilize the individual site's identified student percentage for CEP to determine site eligibility. If your site is part of a group or a district claiming percentage, you would have to locate the individual site's ISP from the determination worksheet. And then the individual site's ISP would then must be at least 31.25 to be considered area eligible from that school. Provision 2, SFAs can use either the site's base year data for enrolled eligible students or census data from a USDA approved data source. And then census data can be used to determine site eligibility for any site. So to use census data, 50% or more of the children on a census block group must be eligible for free or reduced price meals. So the tool to determine area eligibility using census data can be found on the website at the link located on the slide. Eligibility certification is good for 5 years. Sites do not need to redetermine eligibility every year. So when requesting to operate Seamless Summer in the state agency online software, SNOW, please indicate if eligibility is based on a different year. So area eligibility must be redetermined every 5 years. And if there was a gap in participation, then it has to be determined as well. So for example, last year, if you operated a Seamless Summer site using the flexibilities that were in place last year to use 2019-2020 data, then that site would still be eligible for this summer. Okay, so this slide shows you the census data, that USDA area eligibility mapper with the link. And so when you're looking up sites on this, you would use you would enter the address in search, and if the address is located in a red area, then the site is area eligible, but if it's located in the blue, then it would not be area eligible. All right, so now that was a mouthful, so we're going to go through a few examples to kind of dive into what that means a little bit more clearly. So let's go through a few examples. All right, so using the USDA area eligibility mapper to look up the address, this site is located in the blue right on the edge of a red area. So using your reaction buttons, give me a thumbs up if you think that this site is eligible, and a surprise face if you think it is not. That's right, I'm seeing a lot of surprise faces, and that is correct. It is right on the edge of an area eligible area. So it would literally need to move across the city to that red area for it to be area eligible using census data. So great job, everyone. Okay, now this example is using the free and reduced percentages and the attendance area for the schools. So looking at this map, all of the shaded area is in the attendance area of this Liberty Middle School, and then each of the colors represent the attendance area for a specific elementary school. So using the chat box, go ahead and let me know which of these sites are eligible to participate. All right, I see a lot of comments coming in, and they are not all area eligible. So looking at this map, Liberty Middle School is 46.5%. So we can't use the middle school to determine eligibility. So Burden Elementary School is 60.5%. So that one would be area eligible. And then the middle school, Liberty Middle School, is located in the attendance area of Burden Elementary. So the middle school could be eligible as well. And then Ranch Siena is 51% free and reduced. So that site also would be eligible. So really only Liberty Hill Elementary School would not be eligible to participate. It's not considered area eligible based off of the free and reduced price data, because that is only 44% free and reduced. Just to repeat, Rancho Siena and Burden Elementary School both have free and reduced price percentages above 50%. So those two sites would be eligible. And then any site located in the attendance area. So of those two schools would be eligible. So Liberty Middle School, because it's located in the shaded area for Burden Elementary School, is also eligible to participate. All right, so now we're going to go through a little bit more complex example. So for this one, the attendance area of the entire shaded area is for one high school. And then there are two middle schools, and that black line in the middle separates what the attendance area is for each middle school. Like I said, the entire map is the attendance area for the high school. The two sides for which middle school supports which elementary school. So Roosevelt Elementary School and Washington Elementary School are in the attendance area of Monroe Middle School. And then Franklin Elementary and Hamilton Elementary and Lincoln Elementary are in the attendance area of Madison Middle School. So now you can, using the free and reduced percentages and the attendance areas, which of these sites are eligible to participate. And go ahead and type in the chat box. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of responses come in, and all is the correct answer this time, because that high school is 50% free and reduced. And so all of those sites are located in the attendance area of the high school. We don't even have to dig deeper to the other schools to determine, because the high school is 50% and all of that entire area is the attendance area for the high school. So great job, everybody. I did see a question kind of pop up through this one, so I want to just circle back to that really quick before we move on. So somebody had asked, how do we find out if we are in the attendance area of an eligible school, and can we use them to be eligible? So you would use, with your district's map, you can use kind of like the busing maps. You just want to talk with your district to find out if you can find the enrollment areas for your schools. And if you have more specific questions, your area consultant can help you walk through that in more detail. All right, so let's go through the next example. So this one, we're back to that first map that we had used, but this time we have a mobile route. So looking at this mobile route, it has 6 stops starting at Ranchiana. So what I'd like to know this time is, are all of these stops eligible? You can use your reaction buttons, thumbs up if you think they are all eligible, and a surprise face if you think they're not. Okay, I see a lot of surprise faces. Good job. So that site 6 that goes into the attendance area of Liberty Hill Elementary School would not be eligible. So all the other stops are area eligible, but it goes into that green area. And so that stop would not be eligible to participate. Great job, everybody. All right, so at this point, I will turn it over to Lydia to talk about site types.
All righty, thanks, Sarah. There are different types of seamless summer sites that may be operated during the summer. USDA does encourage sites to operate as open sites to meet the goal of summer feeding, which is to feed as many hungry children as possible when school is not in session. However, there are some additional types that we'll discuss. So for open sites, meals are made available to all children in the area on a first-come, first-served basis at an area-eligible site, and meals are reimbursed at the free rate. On occasion, an open site might need to restrict or limit the meal site's attendance for reasons to do with security, safety, or control. The site must still be publicized as being open and be served on a first-come, first-served basis to all eligible children, but may limit participation and operate as a restricted open site, and meals are still reimbursed at the free rate. The other types of sites include sites that are available only for an identified group of children. These sites require justification detailing why the SFA is sponsoring this type of site. So first is closed enrolled, and closed enrolled sites can be used for schools where at least 50% of the students enrolled at that site are approved for free and reduced price meals, or the location is within the geographical area where 50% of the children are free and reduced. It is for a specific group of children participating in a program or an activity. Summer school cannot be used as a reason for a closed enrolled site. Camps may be residential or non-residential day camps, and eligibility must be established for children that are enrolled in the camp. Camps may claim up to 3 meals per day. Then there are migrant sites, and these sites primarily serve children of migrant families through the age of 18. The SFA must provide certification from the migrant organization sponsoring the site that the site primarily serves children of migrant workers. For all types of sites other than open sites, the SFA must provide an explanation of why the SFA is sponsoring this type of site instead of an open site. Eligibility is based on the free and reduced status of children that are enrolled in the site, and summer school cannot be a closed enrolled site. Please note, with closed enrolled sites, only students enrolled may receive a meal. This means that if you have student workers under 18, you cannot claim their meals at a closed enrolled site. Districts can offer summer meals at both school and community locations. We discussed the different types of sites, so where can these sites be located? Sites can be located in multiple places. Some examples are schools, camps, parks, churches, libraries, and public housing. And there may be other areas not specifically listed here. So school locations are a great option to provide meals during the summer. Many times, a summer school may be in operation. You are able to serve meals to those students and the other students in the community in an open or a restricted open site. Academic summer schools cannot operate as a closed enrolled site. This means that you cannot restrict participation in Seamless Summer to only those students that are enrolled in summer school. It is extremely important to remember to advertise these sites to the community to ensure awareness of the availability of meals during the summer. It is possible, however, to stagger meal service times for the enrolled students in the summer school and the open site for the students in the community, as long as the same meal service is provided to both groups. So this means that the same food is provided and also the same length of time is given for meal service. Please note that summer enrichment programs are not necessary for a site to be approved. We encourage you to sponsor sites throughout the summer. As we discussed, community sites are also an option to offer meals to students where they are. To be eligible, a community site must be located in the attendance area of a school with at least 50% of the students qualifying for free and reduced. The site must also operate for at least 4 days in length, but these days do not have to be consecutive. Mobile feeding is when meals are transported to children rather than requiring children to travel to the meal service location. In mobile feeding, the sponsor delivers meals to an area using a route with a series of stops at approved sites in the community. The meal service must take place on approved days, and the sponsor must serve reimbursable meals during the approved service times. A site supervisor must be present at each meal service. Mobile sites may operate as a full service route, where the site supervisor travels with the vehicle along the route and supervises the site at each stop where the meals are served, or the meals may be delivered to each stop with an on-site supervisor waiting to receive those meals. And site supervisors must remain on-site during the entire approved meal service, regardless of that site's attendance. A great option for mobile routes is using a school bus. Students are able to board the bus at each stop, eat their meal in an air-conditioned space, and then leave. So let's do a couple of true false here. And if you'll use your reaction buttons, again, using thumbs up for true and surprise face for false. So number 1, academic summer schools can be a closed enrolled site. If you would just use your reaction buttons and let me know whether you think that's true or false. Great. So I'm seeing a lot of surprise faces. So that was repeated several times. So I'm glad y'all got that. Okay, now let's move on to the second one. All sites, including mobile routes, must be located in the attendance area of an eligible school or found on the USDA area eligibility mapper. And I'm getting a lot of thumbs up, and that one is true. Good job. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Lydia. As Sarah mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that this year there are no waivers to operate the seamless summer option. However, recently USDA issued a memo, and it is SP 05/2023, which provided guidance on allowing non-congregate meals in rural locations. The USDA rural designation map identifies these rural designations by county. So to determine if a county qualifies as rural, you can access the rural designation map and then search by location. The link to the map has been provided at the bottom of the slide. And if a county is located in an area shaded purple, it is not considered rural. The unshaded areas, they're kind of a light yellow, are considered rural. So in order to operate non-congregate, you have to access that QR code and complete the form. But remember, only sites currently designated as rural on the rural designation map within those counties that have that rural designation will be approved to operate by the state agency. Now, if you are approved to operate non-congregate, there are some things that you're going to have to ensure. And you have to ensure that the area the site serves is not or will not be served by a congregate meal site. You have to implement safeguards that prevent overlap between meal services, because you need to reasonably ensure that children do not receive more than the maximum allowance of meals per day. You may serve up to 5 days worth of meals at one time. However, bulk meals are not allowed. But if multiple meals are distributed at one time, the meals must be easily distinguishable and not require more preparation than heat and serve to consume. And then weekend meals may not be distributed using non-congregate. SFAs designated as rural may serve a combination of congregate and non-congregate sites with approval. Non-congregate meal service may be approved when congregate meal service is not available. So an example of this is a site that only offers breakfast through a non-congregate meal service may be approved to provide lunch through non-congregate meal service. However, on the other hand, let's say we have an open site, such as a school, that is providing congregate meals each day to their kids in academic summer school, and then to kids that are coming in from the community. This site cannot also be approved to provide non-congregate meals like via parent pickup. Non-congregate sites located near a congregate site will not be approved unless there's a valid reason, such as a safety concern. SFAs and the state agency must ensure that the congregate and non-congregate sites will not serve the same population of children for the same meal service on the same day. So please remember, if you are wanting to do non-congregate, you have to apply using the QR code on the slide. We really encourage you to apply by April 30th because we're going to have to start setting up your SSO site soon, and that only sites designated as rural will be approved by the state agency to operate non-congregate. Now, last week, USDA issued additional guidance that expanded the definition of rural by using what they call the Rural Urban Community Area Data, or RUCA data. And this new guidance is found in SP 14, 2023. And what the RUCA data does is it is used to identify rural pockets within communities that were not identified as rural on the USDA rural designation map. So that's why it expands that definition of rural. SFAs using RUCA data to define a rural pocket within a county must have state agency approval. We also have to have USDA concurrence in order to operate a non-congregate site within a rural pocket. So the state agency can approve, but we have to forward that on to USDA. All other requirements discussed on the previous slide still apply when using RUCA data to identify those rural pockets, including the need to complete that non-congregate form. So if you have a rural pocket, you want to access that form and you want to do non-congregate, you need to access the form on the previous slide through that QR code. Your area consultant can help you determine if you do have a site within your county that you could use to define as a rural pocket through the RUCA data.
So the chat box is open. Go ahead and take an opportunity to type those questions, Sarah. I'll go back to slide 8 so you can address the question from earlier.
So I know we saw some comments related to just some confusion on determining area eligibility. So just thought it would be helpful to revisit that earlier slide. So this is slide 8 on site eligibility. So there are multiple ways that you can determine if a site is area eligible. So one of those is using the greater than or equal to 50% of the children are certified for free or reduced price meals. So that's where we would look at the free and reduced percentages for each school in determining, their enrollment areas to determine like if sites located in that attendance area would be eligible. So some of the data that you would need to provide to help illustrate that would be those attendance maps. It might not look at all like what we showed on the slide. It could be, more with busing routes of like where kids are going for which schools as well. But you'll work with your area consultant to determine the best way to determine that. And then the other really key way to identify if a site's area eligible is using that census data. So just putting in the address. A lot of those that are have the high free and reduced percentages as a school are probably located on the census data map, and you'd be able to find them that way. So that's another great way to be able to determine if a site is area eligible, and your area consultant is available to help you determine if sites are area eligible or not.
Sarah, I see a question that I'll address about mobile routes. What is the definition of a site supervisor related to mobile routes? And it's basically just a person that is in charge of making sure that you have accurate meal counting and claiming at that site. So it wouldn't have to be like a manager, for instance. It could be the person that's put in charge of making sure that those meals are being counted correctly at that site.
And we also had a question that says, if we have been approved to do non-congregate, can we provide 5 days of breakfast and 5 days of lunch at the time parents pick up meals? And you can provide the 5 days of breakfast and lunch at the time the parent picks the meals, but you really need to work with your area consultant to make sure that that non-congregate site is not located in the same vicinity of a congregate site. So we just want to and really encourage you, those types of questions, walk through that with your area consultant. And then another question is, can you serve breakfast and lunch at the same time at non-congregate sites? The answer to that is going to be very similar to what we said about the 5 days. Yes, with those non-congregate sites, you could serve those 2 meals together. However, again, please work with your area consultant because we have to ensure that those non-congregate sites are not within the vicinity of a congregate site, because we don't want to increase access to meals that children, are and I just messed up how I said that, but we want to be sure that they only have access to the number of meals that's allowed.
Did you want to address that CEP question too, Stephanie?
Okay, it says, do we use the CEP calculation for Title I or the FRL report on Godot to determine our site's eligibility? No, you just use the ISP that's calculated on your determination worksheet. And I believe as long as that ISP for each school is above 31.25, then you're going to be area eligible, because you take the 31.25, multiply that by the 1.6, and as long as it's 50% or more, you're going to be area eligible.
And then there's another question about using the 2019 FRL. So it's asking, can we use the 2019 FRL to determine eligibility because of the certification of 5 years? So Sarah did talk about that. If that was a site in 2019 and that site was area eligible, then you could, but if that site hasn't been a site and you're starting over and that's a new site, then that 5 years would start over, right, Sarah?
Yes, that's correct. And we saw a number of comments related to the link not working on slide 8. So the area eligibility mapper link, I'm dropping that in the chat right now.
So if the summer school, whoops, where'd the question go? Okay, if the school has summer extension classes only and the non-congregate pickup site is on the same campus, can we serve meals from another school to the summer school and list the pickup site as non-congregate? Okay. Non-congregate meals cannot be served in the same place as congregate meals so you really need to work with your AC and go through those specifics on your operations.
I see the next question is, if we're only eligible for congregate feeding, is there any way to send meals for times that we're not serving congregate meals? So if you are not considered rural, then there is no non-congregate option. It would only be available for those of you that are designated as rural. Now, if that situation was that you were congregate 4 days and wanted to send a 5th day home and you are rural and approved for non-congregate, then that would be an allowable way to implement non-congregate feeding. I think that's similar to the next question. It said, in a congregate setting, can we occasionally send meals for a Friday when they pick up the Thursday meal? The site has a place to store the food safely and will not serve out the meals until the correct time and day. So yeah, we just want to walk through that situation specifically with you, but it is possible, like we said, to if you're approved to operate non-congregate, that you could distribute meals for the day that you're not serving congregately. You could distribute those non-congregately. Okay, so the next question is, if we did not participate in summer feeding in summer 2022, are our sites still eligible under the 5-year certification? And no, they're not. So you would use current data to determine eligibility. Yeah, it has to be in operations for the 5-year status to work.
And if a school district is traditionally a 4-day school week, can we serve 5 days of meals during the summer? And yes, you may. You would just have to make sure that when you set up your pages that you check all 5 days that you are going to operate, because it's not really a reflection of what you did during the school year. It's what your plans for summer operation are. All righty. So now we're just going to talk about and walk through the process of setting up your sites in Snow. I know even at the state, it's confusing a lot of times because it's something we only do once a year and it's easy to kind of forget the process. So we're going to walk through how to actually do that. Okay, so in order to participate, you must provide information for each site where you plan to serve meals, and the sites must be approved in Snow. The information to be provided includes the site name, the meal or meals to be served, the meal service times, and the program operation dates. This is the actual beginning and ending date of the meal service for each site. The site address, and this must be a valid Google Map address. It can't be the corner of such and such and such and such street. It needs to be an actual address. The site type, whether open, restricted open, or one of the other options. And please remember, for restricted open sites, you must provide an explanation of why you are restricting attendance. And it must be related to security, safety, or control, and you still must operate as an open site on first come, first served basis. If the site is closed enrolled, an explanation of why a closed enrolled site is being sponsored is also required. Additionally, the school for which eligibility is based must be provided. If the school does not show greater than 50% free and reduced this school year, you will be required to write a comment on how eligibility was determined, such as if you use the USDA area eligibility mapper. You must also provide a contact person for the sites. And if summer school spans 2 fiscal years, it's helpful to get your site set up before the rollover in snow. This allows you to enter the sites once and only make minor edits in the new fiscal year. If you don't add this before the rollover, then you'll have to enter that information twice in both fiscal years. Also, in order to be approved, you must be able to operate the National School Lunch and School Breakfast program and be considered in good standing. If significant findings were identified during a review, you may not be approved until such findings are sufficiently resolved. Okay, the filing school must have SSO checked on the SAI page in order to add SSO sites to that school. Once that is done, you'll be able to add sites under that school on the Seamless Summer tab. You cannot change the claiming school of a site that is already set up from the SSO page. If you are changing the claiming school of a site that you operated in the past, you must add the ending date of the original site and create a new site under the new claiming school. Here is what the site approval page looks like in School Nutrition Online, or SNO. As you can see, it contains all the information we discussed, as well as additional information that must be captured. We will highlight a few areas where we have received questions or required revisions in the past. As we mentioned, the site address must be a valid Google Map address. This is because the address is then communicated with USDA and the Food Finder and is used by families to locate meals in their area. The number of children served is an estimate of how many children will access this site. You can determine this by looking at your historical data if this is a site you operated in the past. Site type. As we discussed earlier, there are different types of sites, and in most cases, a site should be operated as an open site. Restricted open is only allowed when it is necessary to restrict attendance due to security, safety, or control. And in this type of site, the site is still open and you would distribute meals on a first come, first served basis. Closed enrolled are sites that serve an identified group of children that are participating in a specific program or activity. And again, summer school does not qualify as a closed enrolled site. The beginning and ending dates of SSO must be the actual dates of operation. If you are operating your site from June 5th to July 21st, then those are the dates that you should enter here. When rollover occurs, you won't have to change that date because it'll already be correct. The next section is the school upon which eligibility is based and the contact information for that site. First, select the school which eligibility is based upon and click Add. Refer to the section at the beginning of this training for more information on determining area eligibility. Next, you would add the contact name and the phone number for that site. Next, you will select which meal programs the site will participate in. Once you check the box, you will be able to enter information for that meal, such as the counting and coding procedure and whether offer versus serve will be implemented. The serving times for SSO must be the exact times you are serving meals to children at that site. This again is extremely important because these are the times advertised to the community and relayed to Food Finder so that the community knows when they can come and receive a meal. The days of the week you will serve SSO meals are the days that you will distribute meals. If you were approved to operate a non-congregate site, you would only check the days of the week that you will distribute meals. The month you will serve meals is based on the fiscal year. Remember, our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30th. So in the current fiscal year, you will check the months you are operating. For example, you will check June, which is in SY23. The July that is listed on the current SSO page is last July. So once rollover occurs, you will then check July, which is a part of SY24. So sites are allowed to offer up to 2 meals each day, and there are different combinations of meals that this could include. You could do breakfast and snack, breakfast and lunch, a snack and lunch, an AM snack and a PM snack, a breakfast and a supper, but you may not serve both lunch and supper, and supper must be served in the evening. Camps and migrant sites may serve up to 3 meals per day, and in this case, lunch and supper could be served. You must follow the meal pattern for the type of meal offered. So for lunch, you would follow the National School Lunch Program's meal pattern for lunch and the School Breakfast Program meal pattern for breakfast. Open sites will use the grade group for the majority of children being served at that site. Closed enrolled sites and camps must follow the actual age grade groups of the enrolled students. And if supper is served, it must follow the lunch meal pattern. The next section is certification. You will select the operating days. And for summer meal sites, this is May through September, meaning that's the time period which the summer meals are served. Next is the advertisement code. Whether you use our state prototype or you come up with your own advertisement, you will indicate that here. And then you will certify that all the information on this page that you've just completed is correct, and that you will only claim reimbursable meals that are served to eligible children. The last section of the SSO information page is the comment box. And for SSO, the comment box is very important because there's a lot of information that we need to capture in that box that would not be captured somewhere else. So you will use this box to comment on how eligibility was determined if it's not based on a school in that pull down box. If it's a mobile route, you will indicate that in this comment box, and you will complete the SSO site information spreadsheet that lists the days and times of meal service. If you're approved to do rural non-congregate, you would also indicate in the comment box how those meals will be served and distributed. And if you are operating a site as restricted open, you would describe why the site must be restricted open. And if it's closed enrolled, you would describe why it is closed enrolled. Once all of the information on each of these slides that I've just covered that are part of the SSO page are completed, you may click submit to submit to your area consultant for approval. So I just referenced the SSO site information spreadsheet. And this may have been referred to in the past as the mobile route spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is recommended and it's designed for you to utilize to help you get prepared, setting up all of your sites so that you can have all of the information ready when you meet with your area consultant to set these sites up in Snow. The completed spreadsheet is required if you are operating a mobile route. For mobile routes, you can create one site in Snow that is designated as a mobile route. And then you would complete the spreadsheet with the specific stops on the route. And this spreadsheet must be uploaded into Snow, making sure to keep it in the original Excel format. The spreadsheet allows you to enter that one site application for the mobile route, and you want to be sure to put the address where the meals are originating and the entire service time frame into Snow, and include the specific stops and times on the spreadsheet. It's imperative that this be completed for the route to be approved by your AC. Please review the completed worksheet with your area consultant before uploading into Snow. These locations on the spreadsheet will be shared with No Kid Hungry. Again, be uploaded into Food Finder so that the community at large knows where to access meals over the summer. Each stop must be located in the attendance area of an eligible school. And the spreadsheet includes which school the eligibility is based upon. It's also important to remember that the information for each site or stop on your mobile route is kept up to date. So if changes are made, then a new spreadsheet would need to be created and uploaded. If you are approved to operate non-congregate, you must describe what meals will be distributed and at what time in the comments box on the spreadsheet. Once your spreadsheet is complete and your AC has reviewed it, you will attach it in the Attachments tab in Snow. This is a screenshot of what that looks like. So remember to keep that spreadsheet in the original Excel format. And if the spreadsheet is not attached, the stops on the mobile route are not approved to operate. So you're not approved to operate until all the sites have been approved. The Attachments tab is also where you can attach any documentation for area eligibility that you may need to attach. Okay, so it's time for a poll. So again, we're going to use our reaction buttons, and I know some people said that they didn't have access. Oh no, it's actually a real poll. Okay, good deal. Okay, so sites must be set up in Snow and approved in order to operate. Is this true or false? It looks like everyone answered true, I believe. So good job. Thank you for that. So the SAM, SAI, SSO pages operate under the fiscal year of July 1 through June 30th. So this means that SSO may be conducted in 2 fiscal years if you serve summer meals during June and July. And rollover is the point in SAM where the next school year is created. It duplicates what is in the current school year and creates it in the new school year. This is why it's very important to make any corrections or updates to your SSO sites prior to rollover so that you do not have to do double duty and create new sites or make changes to sites in 2 fiscal years. The date for rollover this year is May 15th. And in order for rollover to happen, all sites must be in approved status in Snow. After rollover, all sites in the new fiscal year will be open for editing, and SAI pages must be submitted before the SSO sites for July can be submitted.
So we had 2 questions come in at the end of our last question break. Sarah, could you address those while we wait to collect some additional responses?
Absolutely. So the first one we received was, did I hear you correctly that you cannot provide non-congregate for weekend meals? Is that a state by state rule? And so that is correct. Georgia is allowing for 5 days of consecutive meals with, or up to 5 days of consecutive meals for non-congregate sites that are approved, and weekend meals are not included as part of that. Our next question was, so if your summer school is 4 days, can you serve the 5th day non-congregate? And yes, if you're approved to operate non-congregate, you could serve the 5th day non-congregate. But remember, your summer school would be an open site. So you'd advertise that on that 4th day, the students could also pick up meals for that 5th day.
And Sarah, I think Lydia had pointed out earlier too, there was another question that, just because if you have an open site and the summer school is 4 days in length, that open site, even if you're non-congregate, could be open a 5th day. They would just have to eat congregately at that site. So just remember, keep that in mind too.
And do school locations have to operate at least 4 days in length to be eligible? And yes, and that is one of our rules too, because the point of having a summer meal location is to be able to reach children that don't have access to healthy food during the summer. But those days would not have to be consecutive. So it wouldn't have to be like Monday through Thursday. It could be Wednesday for 4 weeks or something like that.
And then we got another question that said, if the sites are the same for July as May and June, will they roll over? And yes, they will if you have them set up before May 15th. So if you have sites set up, and like Lydia was talking about, you have those dates set to say that it was operating, May 30th through July 5th, then, and you set it up before the rollover, then that would roll over and you just have to make minor changes potentially and get it resubmitted.
And that 4-day rule, just to repeat that again, that's something that we've had in place for a long time. It's not a new thing. But we request that, like, for instance, not open a site if you're only going to serve for 2 days. And that's it for the whole summer. So we do ask that you offer meals at least 4 days in length. But again, those days don't have to be consecutive.
And then somebody asked that I repeat what I said about the summer school. So let's say we have an open site and it's not, you can't do non-congregate. So it's an open congregate eating, site. And so it means open, you're going to set the parameters. Summer school is also there. So you would set your times. You can serve on Friday, even if summer school's not there, because that is what time you have decided your site is going to be open and the day of the week that site is going to be open. Because again, it's an open site. It's not just open to summer school. It's going to be open to anyone in the community that wants to come in and eat at that site.
And then another question we got is, what is the required distance from a congregate to a non-congregate site? So there is no distance or area or vicinity. What you have to keep in mind is the point is to not have duplication of meal service. So it would have to be serving separate populations of students. So again, discuss those specific details with your area consultant.
We had a question that said, just to make sure, the only non-congregate option is for rural communities, correct? Yes, either you have to be rural based on that rural designation map or the RUCA data. But again, the RUCA data has to be approved and we have to send that on to USDA for concurrence. So those are the only options for non-congregate. Everyone else would have to serve meals congregately.
Yeah, and I think that answers that last question there too. So.
Okay, one last call for this question segment. As always, we'll have a few more opportunities later on and over the duration of the remainder of this session. But last call for any questions for this segment.
I see a question about meal pattern waivers. So there are no waivers. Waivers do not exist anymore.
And the last question I see, do we need to make sure that pickups at non-congregate and also not getting meals at the congregate sites? And so that's what we're talking about. You're not going to be approved for a non-congregate site if that congregate site is available for the same population of kids to attend. So that's where you're going to work closely with your area consultant to determine the logistics of what you're wanting to do non-congregately to determine if it is something that we're able to approve or not.
And we have one last question. Okay, go ahead.
When we get into the meal pattern, I want to confirm before we answer that. So we'll be talking about meal pattern later in the session, so we'll make sure to address that at that point.
Well, we've talked a lot about site setup and area eligibility. So now we're going to switch gears and move into meal counting and claiming. And so for SSO, just like it is during the National School Lunch, National School Breakfast program, meals have to be counted at the point of service. And so that means that the meals are counted when the child receives a reimbursable meal. Meals cannot be counted by attendance or tray counts or the number of meals that were sent to the site out from the central kitchen. If the number of meals transported is the same as claimed, it may indicate improper counting or an inadequate number of meals was being sent to the site based on the site volume. So seamless summer meals are seamless summer meals for open or restricted open and then migrant sites are not going to be tied to specific children as they serve meals on a first come, first served basis. Meals served to children 18 years and younger are reimbursed at that appropriate National School Lunch or school breakfast free rate. So then what are the options to count meals at these sites, at those open or open restricted or migrant sites? You can use numerical charts. You can use a clicker or a counter, and you can also use tally sheets. Now, with closed enrolled sites and campsites, meals are only going to be served to eligible children. So it may be, you may need to use a roster, like a POS system, a computer system, or either tickets or tokens would be appropriate in those situations. Since most of our sites are going to be area eligible and they're going to be claiming all of the meals at the free rate, a lot of times with SSO, meal counts are taken using a numerical chart. And however they're taken, meal counts have to be completed daily for each meal service by the cashier. And again, those numerical chart is the most typical that is used to record meals at open sites. However, other site types may use a roster instead of a numerical chart. And if you're unsure which meal counting method would be best to use for you to use, please talk with your area consultant because he or she could help you make that decision. Now, on the there's some specific information that has to be recorded no matter how you're doing it for each meal service type. So the required information that we're going to need for each meal service is the site name and then the date of the meal service. And then we'll have to know the meal period. So, for SSO, we have breakfast, lunch, you can do snack, and then supper, which is just, lunch at a later time. Then each reimbursable meal has to be recorded. So the cashier must clearly mark through each number or student name. If you're using a roster, you'd have a student name as the students pass that point of service, beginning with the first number. And we don't want you to draw continuous lines, but we're going to look at some of these in just a minute. And then you also need a place for the total number of meals served for that particular meal period. Now, the total number of meals served should match the number of meals that are marked through or either the number of student names that have received a meal. And there also should be a date for the cashier to sign it and to date it. And then just to point out this upcoming summer, if you are approved for non-congregate, you do need to record with if those meals are served non-congregately, because we're going to have to capture that data and report that back to USDA. So this year, we have updated the daily meal count form for Seamless Summer, which I'm excited about because the old form had lots of spaces that we really didn't need. And so I think this year's, the new form out there is very concise. You can use, again, that QR code provided on the slide to access the form on the website. And as we stated, that the form should be completed daily for each meal service by the S&P cashier. And again, there's a place to put in the site name and the date. There's also a place to enter in the meal period. And there's the box that has the numbers in it that the cashier will check off as the students go through the line. And then there towards the bottom right part of the form, you'll see a total, that the total number of meals, the cashier can write the total number of meals there. And then finally, there's a place for the cashier to sign the form and date that at the bottom. And then we also have included a place for them to put in non-reimbursable meals, like if they've served second breakfast or like meals to program adults, there's a place to add that. And then if they had any paid meals, paid adult meals, there's a place for that as well. And then we have a box for notes, which we thought might be good for a place for you to record if you're serving those non-congregate meals, to let us know, so that it can help you keep track of how many non-congregate meals that you're serving. Okay, so we have an example of a daily meal count form here, and we want to look to see. So let's look to see if it contains all the required information. I know it may be, maybe not the easiest thing to see, but we're going to walk through this together. So does it have a site name? Yes, it does. There's some initials up there for the site names. That's great. Does it have a date? Yes, it does. The date is 6/25. Does it have a meal type? And on this form, it doesn't specifically say what the meal type is. We can kind of confer from the bottom because we see entrees and vegetables and fruit and milk. So maybe it's a lunch, but it really needs a place for it to specifically say which meal type this form is for. And then the number of meals served. It really doesn't have a spot for the number of meals served. We do see where they have checked off, it has the numbers for them to check off as the student goes through the line. It would be much better for it to have that place so that the cashier can record, and then you can compare the number of meals checked off to the number that's in the box. And then it does have a signature at the top of the form. So one thing that is nice about this form is that they have combined the numerical chart with their transport record, and then they're able to document what was sent and then how much was left over. So you don't have to use the form that we provided on the website. You can take it and adjust it. And so we wanted to show you one that they had, a district had kind of created themselves, but point out a couple of things that we felt would make the form even better. Okay, so for this one, use your reaction buttons, a thumbs up for yes and a surprise face for no if you think the form is completed correctly and contains all the required information. So I'm seeing that some no's and a few yeses and, some thumbs up and so a mix. So we'll just kind of walk through this together. This form does have the site name, which is Dublin Middle. It does have the site type, and that's going to be at the top right corner where it says meal and it says lunch. And then it has the date of 6/21. So it has those three things. It has it actually has the number of meals that were received at the site, which was 110. And then they've clearly marked off each meal that the student received, which was 103. And then the total number of meals served, they have that down at the bottom, which is 103. And then they have a place for it to be signed and then dated. So this form is completed correctly, and it is a good example of a form. Now we have another example, and this form is clearly not completed correctly. You can hopefully you'll be able to spot those errors. And so I'd like you to type in the chat box what errors that you see on this form. Great, I see some of my answers coming in and they're looking good. All right, so For this form, a lot of people noted that the site name, that was the first thing they noticed. The site name is missing. I also saw a lot of people note that the signature and the date is missing. You're exactly right. They are claiming 95 meals, which is the number that they received, but it doesn't match the number that is, this has strike throughs. So we can see it has a strike through 99. However, and a couple people caught that, they totally skipped the first 2 lines. So 1 through 40 is not even marked off on this particular form. And then we see number 46 is not checked through either. So, in this particular example, the site supervisor or the director, whoever's looking over these daily meal count forms, would have to go back and see what the issue was. May have to do some retraining with those site supervisors or whoever's checking off those meals, because while I know this is, maybe a fictional example, we do see errors during seamless summer reviews for site supervisors who don't know how to complete these forms. So that is something that you definitely need to stay on top of with your folks who are at the sites checking off meals. Okay, so for second meals, all SSO sites should plan for and prepare for 1 meal per child per meal service. But since attendance may fluctuate, sites that offer breakfast, you may allow eligible children to take a second breakfast and claim it for reimbursement. However, SSO sites cannot claim second lunches, snacks, or suppers for reimbursement. The number and type of meals that may be reimbursed depends on the site type and in the meals that are offered. Second meals must be recorded. And again, there's a spot on that meal count record provided for your convenience to record second meals. SSO sites are allowed to serve meals to adults under certain circumstances. How the meal is reported and then claimed depends on whether the adult is a program adult or a non-program adult. So program adults work directly with meal service at the summer site as either a volunteer or an employee. Meals may be served free to program adults. Meals served to program adults cannot be claimed for reimbursement, but they may count as an operating cost. The number of program adults must be recorded on the meal count record, and again, they cannot be claimed for reimbursement. Non-program adults do not work in any direct way with the meal service at the site. For example, you could have parents or guardians. Those are considered non-program adults. These adults can be offered a meal, however, they must pay for it, or it must be covered using non-program funds, such as the general fund or some other source. Again, this must be recorded on the meal count record and cannot be claimed for reimbursement. The meal counts at each site are combined and entered into the online claim system each month. It is imperative that you ensure these counts are correct. We recommend using a second-party check of these counts before filing your claim for reimbursement, particularly for summer school, because it is not as structured a lot of times, and you're using outside people who aren't necessarily employees of yours in the function of cashiers, and they're doing those meal count forms. So you need to have a second party check so that you can ensure that you are claiming accurately. And then your claim must be submitted monthly by the 20th of the following month. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to continue with meal counting and claiming.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we're going to go through an example and kind of walk through how to consolidate a claim for reimbursement. So for our example, we have one filing school with 3 sites, and each site operates different types of meals and different number of serving days. So what do you think, go ahead and type in the chat box, what do you think, what documentation do we need to begin consolidating the claim for reimbursement? Yeah, so daily meal count, sheets per site, the tick sheets from all of the sites. Yeah, so any of those documentations to show how the site's claimed is really imperative to be able to begin consolidating your claim. All right, so let's look at the example in a little bit more detail. Okay, so for this one, you're going to notice that each site has 2 different meal types, and each site operates different for a different number of operating days during the claim period. And this, of course, is allowed as long as the same children don't have access to more than the maximum number of meals per day, which for most sites is 2. So we're going to take a minute and consolidate the sites. So based on the charts, how many breakfasts were served? So I'll have you type that number into the chat box. So for this example, we have breakfast at site 2 of 309 and breakfast at site 3 for 124. So what is our total? Great, yes. So 143, that is correct. So the next one is lunch. Go ahead and type in the chat box the lunch total to consolidate that. Okay, I think the majority of these are right on. So 516 is the correct number for lunch. And then the last one, snack. How many snacks were served? Great job, everyone. 253. Okay, so these are our totals that we would put onto the claim for reimbursement on the 106. So remember we talked about the 2 meal types being allowed per site, but with this situation, we have multiple sites that operate different types. So our claim for reimbursement will include all 3 meal types. So we can look at the next slide. So here is a look at the DE-106 claim form. So we would enter those totals in the free category for each of those meal types on here. But you're also going to notice what we have highlighted in red. So on here, we would also enter the average daily attendance, or ADA. And then we'll also enter the number of SS meals served. So unlike the school year, you're not going to separate numbers of days meals are served by meal type. You'll only enter the highest number of days the Seamless Summer option is operated in that days SS meals are served. So using our example from the previous slide, how many days is the highest? You can go ahead and type that in the chat box now. Great, yeah, so our site 3 operated 20 days, so that would be our highest number. And I see a question about how do we get ADA for summer, and I'm glad you asked because that's on the next slide. Okay, so average daily attendance, or ADA, is the typical number of children participating in the site. The ADA helps inform program implementation at the national level and facilitates strategic planning and outreach to areas with low participation in the summer food service programs. Ensuring that this number is as accurate as possible is critical to program implementation and operations. So in order to calculate it, you're going to take the following steps. The first is to identify each individual site's primary meal service during the claim period. The second is to divide the count of meals served at the site's primary meal service by the number of operating or meal service days for that site and for that claim period. And that's how you would attain each site's ADA. And then you're going to add all the site ADA calculations together to find the claiming site's total ADA that you'll enter on the DE-106. So for most sites, the primary meal service is typically lunch. However, if a site claims more meals at a different meal service, then that other meal service would be considered the primary meal service and would be included in the ADA calculation. So we're going to go ahead and walk through this example using our 3 claiming sites. All right, so as we're continuing to look at this, you're going to note that each site has a different primary meal service. All right, so for site 1, which is the primary meal service? So which is that meal service that has the most number of meals claimed? Go ahead and type in the chat box now. Great job. Yes. So lunch is the primary meal service for site 1. All right, what about site 2? What's the primary meal service for site 2? Yeah, so with this one, both of them claim the exact same amount, so they would both be considered the primary meal service. So we would just select one because we're not going to use both numbers. We're just going to pick one. So we can just, it doesn't matter. We'll just pick one. All right, so with site 3, what's the primary meal service for site 3? Great, and so the primary meal service for site 3 is the snack. Okay, so that's that. So our site 1, it was the 207, site 2, it's 309, and site 3, it's 150. So like we talked about, we're going to take the primary meal service for each site and it divide it by the number of service days. So we're going to start with site 1. So we're going to take that 207 and divide by 10. So what do we get when we do that? Okay, great. So I'm seeing a lot of responses. And so you do get 20.7 if you get that exact. And so what we're recommending is that you round up to 21. So for site 1, this one would be 21 because when we take 207 divided by 10, we got 20.7. And we want to give them the best number for our ADA. So we're going to round up to 21. All right, so let's do site 2. So site 2, what is the ADA for site 2? Okay, great job. And so I see y'all are already rounding up. So it was 20.6 and we rounded up to 21. So the ADA for site 2 was 21. Great job. All right, what about for site 3? Okay, yep, great job. So for site 3, the ADA was 7.5. Again, we rounded up and it is 8. So 8 is on there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and consolidate that. So what is our total ADA for this example? 50, that's right. So we added the 21 from site 1 to 21 from site 2 and 8 from site 3. And we've got a total of 50. So great job. So this is that number, that total ADA, that 50 is going to be entered on the 106. So let's look at what that looks like in more detail. So you see we zoomed in on that area where we said average daily attendance. That's where we would put the 50. And then like we discussed, the days the SS meals are served was 20 because that was the maximum number of days that the sites operated. And so we completed it and that's what it looks like. Okay, so great job. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie to talk about the 107.
So the DE 107, it consolidates each claiming school's information into that final claim for reimbursement. Now, some of you during the summertime may only have one claiming school, and if that's the case, the numbers on the 106 that you have filed for the school are going to match what is on the 107. And if you have more than one school, it will take the 2 schools or 3 schools you have and combine it all together for your system claim for the 107. This is done automatically from the inside of SNO from the information that is inputted for each DE 106. You will validate the information and need to enter the highest number of eligibles in that section. It's at the bottom there where it says the highest number of seamless summer eligibles this summer. So now we're going to discuss how to determine the highest number of eligibles. So to determine the highest number of seamless summer eligibles to report on the 107, you will total each site's highest number of meals served for any one day during that month for the primary meal service. So we're going to look, let's start to begin. We're going to look at site 1 and determine the day with the highest number of meals served. So for site 1, you can just look down the list there. We're going to try to find the day that had the highest number of meals served. And as you're looking, we can see that on July 9th, the highest number is 35. Great. Now see some have put it in the chat box already. So wonderful. So that's going to be your highest number of free eligibles for site 1. Now we have to continue to follow these same steps for each site to determine the highest number of free eligibles for every site's primary meal service. And then we'll combine each site's highest number of free eligibles to calculate the number of seamless summer free eligibles for the 107. Now, if you are claiming meals by category during the summer, you would also use the same method to identify the highest number of reduced eligibles. So but we're going to walk through an example of calculating the total number of free eligibles for the 107 now. So as we saw, the highest number of eligibles for Site 1 at lunch was 35. So that means lunch was the primary meal service for Site 1. So looking at Site 2, the highest number of meals served on any one day we see is 32 for both breakfast and lunch. However, we're only going to count one of those meals as the primary meal service. So we'll just count lunch as the primary meal service, and it'll be 32 free eligibles. Then for Site 3, the highest number of meals served is going to be at snack, which is going to be 9. So that means snack is our primary meal service, and we're going to have 9 eligibles for snack. So then to get the total, we just add up the highest number from each primary meal service. So that means we're going to add 35 from Site 1, 32 from Site 2, and then 9 from Site 3. So what is our total? Our total is going to be, see, some people have already answered it in the chat box. 76, very good. Now that 76 is that's our total number of eligibles will be reported on the 107. Thank you. You will report that on the 107 again in that highest number of seamless summer eligibles for the month. So you see where we put that, it was free eligibles is 76, and then our total eligibles is 76 at the bottom. All right, now we have another time of open up for questions. So pop them in the chat box and we will do our best to answer those.
And while you guys are typing in your questions, you notice that there was a spot for seamless summer reduced eligibles on that last slide, and you would only have those for those closed enrolled sites where you have children eligible for free and reduced price meals.
Thank you, Sarah, for that clarification.
And so we have one question. Can you claim 2 days from May with your June claim? And the answer to that is yes, you may.
Just giving it a moment to see if we get any more questions for this particular segment, and then we'll proceed with our next section on operating an SSO program.
And we're getting close, I promise.
Yeah, we're on the downhill slide. So.
Y'all have hung in there with us today, and we appreciate it.
They've done a great job, great engagement as well.
So now we're going to discuss what site operations look like. Okay, so for most sites, the site may serve only one meal at a time, and students must consume the meal on site. Only eligible children may receive a meal. So this means that the child must come to the site and eat it there in order for the meal to be counted. If your site is located in a rural area and approved to operate non-congregate, then that site may distribute up to 5 meals at one time for children to consume off-site. Parents or guardians may pick up meals for eligible children. But remember, that does not mean that coaches, teachers, daycare workers, etc. Can do that, because those people are not considered guardians. And weekend meals will not be allowed for the non-congregate. Also, as a reminder, you must apply to the state agency to operate non-congregate using the form that we shared earlier during the presentation. And if you have not already filled that out, please try to do so by April 30th. So each year, SFAs are required to review each SSO site at least once during its operation. The SFA must review the site's compliance with meal counting, claiming, and menu planning, as well as food safety requirements. Also, if you find any errors, then you must provide training and conduct a follow-up review to ensure that the corrections have been made. So on our website, we do have an on-site monitoring form, and you can find this either on our website under the the Seamless Summer information, or using the QR code on the slide. Okay. So your Seamless Summer program will be reviewed the summer after your administrative review. So that means if you had an administrative review this school year, then your Seamless Summer program will also be reviewed this summer. And we must review at least one site and at least one meal service. Okay, so it's time for another poll. How are SSO sites monitored by the SFA? A, one site must be monitored each year. B, one site review per site in operation must be reviewed. C, 50% of the sites must be monitored. Or D, only the state agency will monitor sites. Okay, so the correct answer is B, one site review per site in operation must be reviewed. So if you have 100 sites, you have to review all 100 sites. And I think I'm turning it over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Lydia. So to ensure that you have successful operations during your summer meal program, you need to train your SSO staff before the meal program begins, and then document the attendance and also the agenda of the training session. You definitely need to include any community site operators that you have, in addition to your school nutrition employees, in those training sessions, because it's going to be imperative that your site operators understand what is required to provide meals to students during the summer. So some of the topics that should be included in your training, you want to go over meal pattern, and then offer versus serve if you're implementing offer versus serve during the summer. And specifically for that is like, what is the menu, and then what students are required to take. You must also stress that meals have to be eaten on site and need to be consumed on site for those congregate sites, and that only one item may be taken off site for later consumption. You need to go to talk about proper ways of counting student meals, and then how you handle adult meals. You need to review civil rights, and that is going to include your "And Justice for All" poster. It should be displayed prominently, and that meals are served to all students 18 years and younger. You need to stress to your workers that are there at your training how they would handle civil rights complaints. So going over those civil rights procedures. And then for food safety, how you take temperatures, and then what you do if your temperatures are too low, and how to properly store food so that they're safe to consume by the students or the children. And then, completing records, that your production records, your transport records, they have to be completed daily and then maintained, because that's documentation that validates the meal counts. So at a minimum, it is going to be important for non-school sites to sign a sponsor site agreement form, and that lists out all the responsibilities and the agreements that they have with you as the operator of the SSO program. And this form is available on our website if you would like to access it. All right, and then SSO sites do have to make a reasonable effort to promote availability and then location of free meals to children in the community. So as part of that application process, and that's when you're completing your SSO, SAI pages in SNO, you're going to identify how each site promotes the availability of school meals meals to children in the community during the summer. And I think Lydia pointed this out earlier, that the information that you put in on each of those SSO, SAI pages will be sent to No Kid Hungry for promotion on their website and some of those other places that we send that information. So it's really important that the information that you are promoting matches what we have in Snow, and then so that it matches what goes to No Kid Hungry. You should provide enough detail on the SAI page so that the method of promoting meal service to the public can be documented and then confirmed later during your review. So let's say, for example, if you stated on the SAI page that SSO meals would be advertised in some sort of publication like a newspaper, a copy of that advertisement, you would need to keep a copy of that, should be available. Also, documentation of public service announcements, such as radio or television station, and copies of flyers that you may have provided to students or mailed out to parents should be available. Additionally, you want to make sure that your sites are welcoming to the students or the children as they come in, and then ensure that all of your site staff understand that free meals are available to children in the community and not just to children who may be attending like an academic summer school. We do have some customizable flyers on our website in English and in Spanish that you can utilize to help promote your program. And isn't that little fella right there on that slide cute? I mean, on that little flyer cute. So you can use those to help spread the word about SSO. And then Justice for All, your And Justice for All posters, as we stated earlier, need to be posted in your sites. That's going to include your non-congregate sites and then any mobile routes. If you need additional copies, you can print them from the website, and we have the link, or not the link, but the I think that's called the breadcrumb on how you find those And Justice for All posters. They're in the section of our graphic downloads. And then just a brief mention about record retention. We have to keep all of our SSO documents for 5 years plus the current year, and that is going to include production records for meals that are served, our records of the number of reimbursable meals and then non-reimbursable meals that are served. So a lot of times that's going to be those meal count forms, records of any meals sold to adults. So again, that could be recorded on those numerical chart forms. Your on-site reviews by the SFA, and as we stated, you have to do, each site has to have one on-site review during the summer. Your food safety plan and any records that are associated with that food safety plan, and then any advertising that you do for your SSO sites needs to be kept together for 5 years plus the current year. And now Sarah's going to talk briefly to you about, I think, production records and transport forms.
Thank you, Stephanie. So as Stephanie mentioned, production records are required documents that must be maintained. Production records document that reimbursable meals are served to children, and they also support the claim for reimbursement. And so these documents must be maintained for 5 years plus the current year. Production records must be completed daily to document what was prepared and served for each meal service that you're serving. If you have multiple sites being serviced by one production kitchen, then you should complete one production record from the preparation site and then use transport records to document what is sent and served at each feeding site. Okay, so as we discussed, you can use the transport record when you're preparing at one location and sending meals to other sites. The preparation site should complete the full production record with the amounts prepared for all locations, and then the transport record will specify the amounts of each item sent to that location. It also provides communication for that site on the portion size of each menu item, along with the temperatures of the items when they leave the satellite kitchen. Once on site at the feeding location, the staff can utilize the transport record to record temperatures, number of meals served, and any leftovers. And then the SFA should also retrieve copies of these completed transport records to complete the full production record and maintain documentation of what was served at each site. And the link to the transport record is located here on the slide. Okay, so this next slide is a picture of a completed transport record. So using the reaction buttons, let us know if this is completed correctly. So thumbs up if you think it is completed correctly, and a surprise face if you think it is not. I am seeing a mix of responses, but those of you that gave a thumbs up are correct. It is completed correctly. Does have all the information needed to document compliance. It has that site name, the date of service, the items served, and the amounts prepared and left over. It even documents temperatures. So this is a great example of a fully completed transport record. Okay, so as we've just discussed, production records and transport records document what was served, but how do we ensure that menus are planned to meet the meal pattern for each site? So you need to plan menus using the meal pattern established for the type of meals that are served. So you would use the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program meal patterns to meet requirements. So this also includes the whole grain rich requirements and vegetable subgroups, and the vegetable subgroup requirements would apply to lunch and meals served, supper meals served. The meal pattern for the age grade group of children served at each site needs to be followed. However, for open sites or restricted open sites where it could be difficult to implement grade group requirements, then you are able to plan menus using a single age grade group for the most common age grade group of children that attend that site. And this holds true for both school and non-school sites. All other sites that serve an identified group of children, such as closed enrolled sites, camps, they must follow the age grade group for the enrolled students, since you know specifically what the population of those students are. Like I mentioned, if supper is served, it must follow the National School Lunch Program meal program. And then remember too that accommodating children with disabilities is also required in Seamless Summer. It's obviously easier to do so for closed, enrolled, and migrant and campsites where you have the identified student population, but it can be done for open sites based on requests from participants or knowledge of disabilities in the community. Okay, so with SSO sites might operate more than or less than 5 days during the week. So I know we had a lot of questions earlier where folks are operating 4-day weeks. So you would follow the meal pattern requirements for the number of days that you're serving. So if you're operating a 5-day week, that's the normal meal pattern chart. If you are doing less than 5 days, then you would you would follow the meal pattern chart for the 3 or 4 day weeks. If you have more than 5 days, then you would follow the 6 or 7 day meal pattern charts. And those are located on our website. And they're under the programs page. If you click then on lunch and then the meal pattern, you would be able to access the meal pattern charts for short and long weeks. So before I move on to water availability, I want to kind of circle back to that question we received earlier about taking meals off site. So we've talked a lot about meals must be consumed on site, and the only allowance is to allow one item, a child to take one item off site, and that can be a fruit, a vegetable, or a grain item that they can take off site for later consumption, as long as it's in compliance with state and local health and sanitation codes. So that is the only allowance. There's not if they take a bite out of everything, like can they take it off site? It's just one of those 3 items are allowed to be taken off site, and everything else must be consumed on site for that to be reimbursable. If more items are taken off site, then that meal is no longer considered reimbursable because it was not served congregately. And then one other thing to mention was about weekends. So if you are actually physically operating a weekend site, so on a Saturday or Sunday, that is allowed. It's just with non-congregate that weekend meals are not allowed. Okay, now to water. So water needs to be available at all school sites at lunch, and it's optional for all community sites and school sites for breakfast. So it's similar to the requirements during the school year. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie to wrap us up.
All righty. So what are your next steps? Oh, yeah, there you go. Uh-oh.
Not
is it
sure
turned
why
funny?
the text has flipped, maybe tired, but we'll get that reconciled in the recording.
Okay. So what are your next steps if you are planning to operate SSO this summer? Well, first you need to determine what sites you're going to operate for the summer and what days, and then the times the sites are going to be open. Use that SSO site spreadsheet. You can use that spreadsheet to record all that site information before starting the process of updating those SSO SAI pages in Snow. You can begin setting up SSO pages in Snow beginning May 1. So you'll want to now start having some real conversation with your area consultant about your SSO setup, what your SSO plans are, so that y'all can all be on the same page. And then remember that rollover is May the 15th. So you don't have to have your sites all updated, but it'd be really great if you did. That way, whatever's in there on May the 15th will roll over into that new school year. And then just a few reminders that USDA foods can be used in the Seamless Summer Option meals, that your meals do have to meet meal pattern requirements to be reimbursable, and that children have to consume meals on site, which Sarah addressed that just now. And then you want to follow those meal service times as stated on the SSO SAI page. But if you see that as you start the summer off and you're doing one thing and then the site needs to change, you just need to contact your area consultant and let them open up the SAI page so that you can update that, so that what's in Snow is going to be reflective of what's actually happening out in your community and in your school sites. All right, and then finally, our last slide for the day is about our the SSO resources. We do encourage you to review a copy of SP09 2017 that this resource provides. It's a great Q&A on operating the Seamless Summer Option. And there's a link to that memo there. And then you can access more information, memos and resources on our SSO website. And we provided the link to that SSO website as well. So, and again, one of your other resources, it's not on the slide, but it's definitely your area consultant. So please reach out to your person and your assigned area consultant and let them help you and guide you through this process. And now we are moving on to our last time of questions.
Yes, so thank you to our compliance specialist. While we wait for responses to collect in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and share the learning code information for today's session. You see it on the screen, and we're going to also drop it in the chat box. So this session qualifies for 2 hours, and it falls under the professional learning code of 3220. So feel free to take a screenshot. And as a reminder, today's session was recorded, and once it's available, it'll be shared back out and made available in our training catalog. So just be mindful of that. And we'll go ahead and start answering those questions that are in the chat box.
So I see a question, where can we get a copy of the form that will be used to audit SSO? And so if you're referring to your on-site monitoring form, that is located on our SSO site information webpage. And that's that link that was on the previous slide. If you're talking about the AR form, that's used for Seamless Summer, you can request a copy from your area consultant. We have another question. We have sites that go on field trips over the summer and would prefer to have breakfast and lunch distributed at the same time. Students eat lunch on the field trip. Is this allowable? So, yes, this could be allowable since the students are eating it congregately, but it'd be helpful to just talk through all the specifics with your area consultant before we say for sure, but it is possible that this would be allowable.
And then there was another one further up. If you serve breakfast and lunch together, can you indicate both meal types on one form? If you are congregate, and you may have different numbers for breakfast and lunch, then you would need to be able to distinguish what was breakfast and what was lunch, and all of that required information that Sarah talked about would need to be included. So what I would do is I would share your form with your area consultant, have them look at it, and make sure that everything that needs to be there is there.
All right. So it was, how will you calculate lunch for field trips during SSO? And it would be the same. I mean, you have to go through the point of service and count meals as students receive it. So there's different options, I would say, available for field trips on what works best to ensure that it meets all the requirements. So I would say talk with your area consultant about this more specifically so they can help walk you through what would be the best option for your site. And then we are aware that this SSO community site agreement form is not opening, so we'll get that fixed, and it will we'll let you know when we send the recording.
So thank you all. We appreciate you all for joining us today. Thanks for being so deeply engaged in this conversation. And as always, the conversation can continue beyond this point. Feel free to reach out to your area consultant for any additional support that you may need. We also encourage you to like, follow, and engage. So take an opportunity to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Take a listen to our Fuelcast podcast so you can learn more about school nutrition and share those wonderful stories with our external partners about the wonderful instances that take place in our discipline. Also, if you'd like to share any amazing stories that are happening at the district level, feel free to send an email to fuelingga@godot.org. And as always, please bookmark our webpage. There's a wealth of knowledge and resources available for you. Make sure you bookmark the webpage smp.godot.org. And we will see you in a training somewhere shortly. Have a great day.